Hello, everyone. I want to make an observation today. I mean, there's so much stuff going on, and a lot of people have already covered it, but I want to, as I adjust this, excuse me, I want to talk about something that I think is pertinent at this point in time, more so than an East Coast economic update. And I'm probably going to expand on this statement that I'm going to share with you on my East Coast economic update blog. Um, I want to show you the parallels between prophets and preppers, and it's been bothering me because I've been doing a little bit of research. I'm teaching a class, and I'm also doing the Blog Talk Radio stuff. And I was just doing some research for a show coming up, and I want to show you something that I find fascinating, both as a theologian and as a constitutionalist. And here it goes. This, if you can see this, is the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. I always carry this with me, and I read it whenever I get a chance, especially when I see crap, which is all the time. And this is all the laws, all the mitzvot, as it states here, that one can practice. Sorry about that. That was Hershey as a puppy. I don't normally treat my books like this. This is all the laws that the Torah teaches, the 613 commandments that are given in the first 5 books of Moses, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, interesting thing about these two, both of them are constitutions. One is the Constitution that God brings down in Mount Sinai, and this is the Constitution that came by our forefathers in 1789, after a lot of debate and discussion. Both of these, I would strongly suggest that this comes a very close second to the Bible, which this is a critical part of. And it's an interesting thing about these two documents. Both of them you can pretty much, fit in a small book, minus the choose. Sorry about that. It just drives me nuts when I see it. But the more interesting thing is that whenever we divert from these two items, we get thrown out of the land. Jews have learned over time and time again that when they don't obey the mitzvot, they don't obey the commandments that God gave us at Sinai, we get thrown out of the land into dispersion. When we don't obey the Constitution of the United States, we cause ourselves in foreign entanglements, as Jefferson and Madison stated, and we place ourselves in an economic downturn and collapse. And another interesting parallel. Now, this is just the 613 mitzvot that can be practiced, but the rest of the book, which we know as as commonly known as the Old Testament, or what we refer to in Judaism as the Hebrew Scriptures, have the prophets. And now let's talk about the prophets for a second. And there is going to be a parallel, and it's going to be pertinent. The prophets, their purpose is to warn us when we divert from the commandments. Now, in modern times, and of course, what happens with guys like Jeremiah, Hosea, Zechariah, and so forth, they say, turn back to the law, and everything will be hunky-dory. Don't. You're going to lose the blessing of God, ultimately, and be dispersed to Babylon, Syria, the Greeks, the Romans, and finally, Destruction Temple, right? So, what do we have now in the 21st century? We've got preppers, prophets of the 21st century. And what do they say? Well, Peter Schiff, you, me, everybody on YouTube, our friend Ron Paul, and so forth say, if we don't obey the Constitution and what its intention is about, we're going to lose our sovereignty and ultimately become slaves. Well, very interesting. Both, I believe, and that's me speaking, were given to us by God. I really believe so. Both, actually, just to point these out, and you see where I'm going with this. Both of these say there are checks and balances. We have to treat each other as, we have to treat one another under the law correctly, and we have to make sure that we handle all the things that we have to handle, protecting our homes. If you ever read the 613 mitzvot, most of them, 194 or 97 of them, have nothing to do with sacrificial system. It has to do with dealing with animals, dealing with one another, and so forth. And this tells us, people are people, and there's a check and balance system, because it's natural in a person's nature that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and there's a check and balance system to prevent any kind of overshoot of one's authority. Say you're the executive branch or the legislative branch or the judicial branch of the government, and it says, we know that people will do naughty things, and we've set it up that as long as you stay within your parameters, that each one can veto the other or overshoot the other, there's a balance. And in the case of Ron Paul, the modern prepper, I'm using the word prepper as opposed to the word prophet, because they basically do the same thing. They see the document and they say, this is not what the document says, and this is not what the framers of the Constitution wanted. We should obey it by making sure that only, for example, money is real money, and it's coined and not fiat by the Congress, not the Federal Reserve. Funny says the same thing here. It says that only coin money, and there is no talk about fiat, and it's regulated by certain individuals, and we won't go into the complexities of this. But I want to show you that what happens here is that the prophet is not some guy who gets clunked on the head by God and said, you shall go here. No, it's actually, if you read the prophets and you look at their historical perspective in that point in time, in the case of Jeremiah and Hosea, and I won't go into biblical studies here because that's not what I want to do here. But it's interesting that they turn around and say, hey, guys, you got to obey the law, because if you don't obey the law, we're going to lose our sovereignty and we'll be taken over by a foreign power and dispersed. Guys, here's the Constitution. It says that we should coin money, for example. And the executive branch shouldn't overshoot the legislative branch, and the legislative branch can't break the Constitution. That's why we have the judicial branch. And if we don't obey this and get into foreign entanglements, we'll lose our sovereignty and we'll become slaves. There's a consistency here, boys and girls. Consistency. So our preppers, ultimately, are our modern-day prophets. And just like a prophet, they say, look, if you don't obey this, if we don't stick to it, and we allow ourselves to get into foreign entanglements and start to make fiat currency and all the other stuff and disobey what this little document says, we're going to lose our sovereignty. If we do what it says, we're going to be profitable in the land. Now, both of these, and I just want to show this to people who are religious, as well as there's a consistency here, boys and girls. The consistency here is that the Torah says, if you do what I command you to do, you'll live long in the land, and you'll have all this good stuff, and you'll always be profitable in your in your walk with God. For example, this says same thing, but what does it say? We have to have a secure money supply. We have to have we have to have our own productive capacity, and remember, the tax system here was based on commerce, in the sense that you paid tariffs for foreign goods coming into our country. We no longer do that. We let anybody roll us over like a drunk in the street. And preppers are our modern prophets, and they say very simply, do this And don't let us get involved in foreign entanglements. And guess what? We'll live long in the land, and we'll have sovereignty over ourselves. Live long in the land, we'll have sovereignty for ourselves. If we don't do it, we're going to be taken over, and we'll be slaves. This has been going on for about 3,500 years. This 280 years or so, I'm sorry, 230 some odd years, but both are perfect, simple, straightforward, and real easy to do. And yet, just like the Hebrews of old, we don't want to be separate than anybody else. We want to be like the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, real simple. If we don't listen to our modern prophets, our preppers of the 21st century, we will be dispersed. And like it says in Hosea, you will lo hami, you will no longer be my people, and I will no longer be your country, to paraphrase Hosea. A warning from a prepper. Listen to the other preppers, because if you want to know who screwed this up for everybody, stare in the mirror, because if you don't take hold of the Constitution and you don't think it's important, this thing will say to you, as they say in Hebrew, lo ha mi, lo ha mi, no longer my people. A warning and something to think about. Good Shabbos.